This episode of After the Quiet contains personal experiences and discussions related to emotional abuse, coercive control, harassment, neighborhood conflict, police involvement, criminal charges, intimidation, and relationship trauma. Some content may be distressing or triggering for listeners. Hi everyone, and welcome back to After the Quiet. This is episode 79. And I'd like to apologize for my listeners that this episode is a day late. But as you can tell, I've lost my voice, so I'm trying my best here. Today's episode is about our neighbors and how a conflict that should have been solved with a conversation eventually ended up in a courtroom. By this point, we had been living in our new house for a few years. The pool was finished, the cabana was built, the fire pit was installed. The backyard looked like something out of a magazine. From the outside, it probably looked like we had everything. But appearances can be deceiving. The truth was that there was a growing tension between us and our neighbors. And when I say us, I need to be honest. This wasn't really my conflict. It was his. The problem started with noise. At first, I assumed it was just a disagreement between neighbors, something that would eventually work itself out. But over time, it became obvious that this wasn't accidental. The noise was intentional. If he was angry, annoyed, or felt slighted by the neighbors, he wanted them to know it. And one of the ways he expressed that was through loud music and sounds blasted across the backyard. Sometimes it was loud music. Sometimes it was recordings of barnyard animals. Sometimes it was sounds that made absolutely no sense to me. I remember standing in my kitchen hearing farm animals echoing across the neighborhood and wondering how we had gotten to this point. The neighbors would become upset, and instead of trying to calm the situation down, things seemed to escalate. The louder the complaints became, the louder the response became. At first, I thought everyone would eventually move on, but they didn't. Because from the neighbor's perspective, this wasn't a one-time event. This had become a problem. A pattern, you would say. A very well-documented pattern. The neighbors began recording videos, saving evidence, keeping records. Eventually, they had accumulated more than 80 videos documenting the behavior. 80. When I heard that number, I was stunned. Because that meant this wasn't simply a misunderstanding. This had become a long-running conflict. Then came the final straw. One day he began playing explicit sexual sounds loudly enough for the neighbors to hear. At that point, they had enough. The police were called. And unlike previous complaints, the neighbors weren't willing to simply let it go. They wanted action. They wanted accountability. And they wanted the behavior to stop. The situation eventually resulted in a criminal charge for mischief. I remember feeling completely overwhelmed. Because who expects to find themselves in a situation like that? Who expects their family life to involve police reports, court dates, and neighbors collecting evidence? The entire thing felt surreal. What shocked me even more was learning that the neighbors weren't alone. Other neighbors had become frustrated too. Some provided supporting letters. People who had witnessed the behavior. People who had experienced the noise. People who felt the situation had gone too far. But what impacted me the most wasn't the complaints. It wasn't the videos. It wasn't the charges. It wasn't the court proceedings. It was what some of those letters actually said. Several neighbors wrote that they felt bad for me. They wrote that they were worried about me. They worried about the children. At the time, reading those words was almost harder than reading the complaints themselves, because these weren't close friends. These weren't family members. These weren't people who knew what happened behind closed doors. These were neighbors. People who only saw glimpses of our lives. People who saw us through backyard fences. People who waved from driveways. People who overheard fragments of conversations. And somehow, they were concerned enough to put it in writing. Concerned enough to tell a court that they worried about me and my children. I remember feeling embarrassed. Not because of what they wrote, but because I still hadn't fully accepted what they were seeing. To me, I was still trying to manage the chaos. Still trying to smooth things over. Still trying to keep the peace. But these people were seeing something very different. They weren't simply seeing a neighbor dispute. They were seeing the impact it was leaving on a family. They were seeing a wife caught in the middle. They were seeing children growing up surrounded by unnecessary conflict. And they were worried. Looking back now, this wasn't the first time outsiders had recognized something wasn't right. My coworkers had noticed. My friends had noticed. The neighbors from the pool party had noticed. And now even the people living around us were noticing. People kept seeing things that I wasn't ready to acknowledge. One thing that always made me uncomfortable happened during conversations he had with other people about the situation. More than once, he suggested that he should have had the motorcycle club take care of the problem from the beginning. At the time, those comments made me incredibly uncomfortable. I remember hearing them and feeling anxious immediately. Whether he meant them seriously or not wasn't really the point. The point was that in his mind immediately went to escalation, not resolution, not compromise, not finding common ground. Escalation. Looking back now, I don't think this was ever really about noise. It wasn't about music. It wasn't about property lines. It wasn't about disagreements between neighbors. It was about control. It was about what happened when someone challenged him. It was about his need to win. And if someone pushed back, he pushed harder. The hardest part for me was feeling trapped in the middle. I wasn't creating the conflict, but I was living with the consequences. I worried every time a police car drove through the neighborhood. I worried about what the neighbors thought. I worried about what our children were witnessing. Because children notice more than we think they do. They notice tension. They notice conflict. They notice when adults stop speaking to each other. And while the adults were fighting a neighborhood war, the children were living in the middle of it. Looking back now, what strikes me most is how much effort was spent creating conflict. Imagine what could have happened if even a fraction of that energy had been spent resolving it. Imagine if accountability had replaced pride. Imagine if peace had mattered more than winning. But that's not what happened. Instead, the conflict grew until it became something far bigger than a disagreement between neighbors. And once again, I found myself watching another situation spiral out of control while wondering why nobody seemed interested in simply making things better. What I didn't realize at the time was that the neighbor's letters weren't just describing his behavior. They were describing my reality, and they could see it more clearly than I could. Thanks for listening to After the Quiet. Please remember to subscribe to this podcast and share it with others who might need to hear my story. And also join me on Instagram at after.the.quiet. If you recognize parts of my story in your own, please reach out to someone who can give you support, or look for that support in your community. You are not weak for needing help. You are human. Your voice deserves to be heard.